Good evening, everybody. My name is Diego Gomez. I'm the project development engineer for the New Mexico Department of Transportation. We're here for the public meeting for New Mexico 68 Phase 3, milepost 2.4 to milepost 4.2. That's the northern city limits of Espanola to Okeowinge. And this is the public involvement meeting for today, November 7th, 2024.
Thanks. Okay, so for those of you who have joined us, my name is Laura Thompson. I'm with SWCA Environmental Consultants. This is the final public meeting for Phase 3 of the New Mexico 68 Roadway Improvement Project. And we're going to be presenting the proposed roadway improvements. We're expecting that the presentation will take about 30 minutes, and then everyone will be muted throughout the presentation with an opportunity to participate in the question and answer session after that 30-minute presentation. If you've joined using the Zoom app, you can follow along with the slides that are on the screen. If you have not joined via the Zoom app and you're only on the phone, you can follow along with the slides using the PDF of the presentation that's made available on the website, which is swcavirtualpublicinvolvement.com/Espanola. And that's on the right-hand side. It's linked to the right-hand side. All right. I think we're ready for Diego Gomez from the NMDOT to kick us off.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Diego Gomez. I'm the project development engineer for the New Mexico Department of Transportation. As Laura just said, we're here for the public meeting on New Mexico 68 Phase 3 from milepost 2.4 to milepost 4.2. That's just the northern city limits of the city of Espanola through a portion of Okeowinge. And this is the public involvement meeting for today, November 7, 2024. We're gonna have the district engineer, Rhonda Lopez, introduce herself and talk a little bit about the district and give you guys an idea of what the DOT does.
Thank you, Diego. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight to review the work to date on the New Mexico 68 Roadway Improvement Project. Like Diego said, my name is Rhonda Lopez, and I'm the New Mexico Department of Transportation District 5 engineer. Diego, also joining us from the district is Mr. Javier Martinez. He is also with District 5. He is the Assistant District Engineer for Engineering Support. That's all we have in attendance from the district, but we also have Diego from NMDOT, and we also have Jennifer Mullins from our Environmental Bureau. Regarding the project itself, the city of Espanola is both growing and aging, and particularly outgrowing in some areas of its transportation infrastructure. This project has been in considerable need for a long time, serving both regional and local needs as they have grown over the decades. And we are pleased to present tonight the status of our progress and receive for consideration any comments that you might have in these phases of its design. We've assembled a highly qualified team of consultants from NV5, SWCA Environmental Consultants, who have enthusiastically undertaken the challenges in thoroughly developing the project's background, devising alternatives, and now designing a project for construction. As in all we do at NMDOT, our priorities are always safety, economy, multimodal mobility, environmental protection, and cultural resource preservation. Thank you again for attending this meeting tonight and your participation and input into this important project. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Diego and the consultant.
So like Rhonda said, we have MB5 who we've hired to design a large portion or this portion of the project. They're also designing a couple of southern and northern portions. If I could ask when I introduce you guys to just turn on your camera and introduce yourself briefly. Steve, who is the senior project engineer for MB5, if you could just turn on your camera briefly and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Diego. My name is Steve Harris. I'm senior design engineer on the project for NV5. I'm a long-term transportation engineer. I worked for the DOT for about 28 years before going into the private sector. In any event, hello everybody, and welcome to our meeting.
So Chris, would you mind turning on your video and introduce yourself just briefly?
Chris Romano, NV5 design engineer. I'm the one doing the in the trenches part under Steve, and pleasure to have you all here.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have Hal here?
Al, I don't believe is here tonight.
So Hal's another part of the design team. Teresa, I believe, is here. She's working through the environmental part. Teresa, would you mind introducing yourself just briefly?
Hi, I'm Teresa Hurt with the SWCA. I'm our project manager for this project on our side, and also the cultural resources lead for the project.
Thank you,
We've
Teresa.
got, Laura.
And Laura introduced herself briefly at the beginning, but Laura, if you could just introduce yourself again.
Hi, Laura Thompson with SWCA as well, and I'm the public involvement lead and also the natural resources lead.
Okay, that concludes our introductions. We'll go ahead and start the presentation. And if there's any questions, please type them into the chat and we will address the questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Diego. This slide shows the timeline for the project, beginning with the alignment study through the preliminary and final design, and indicates where we are today in the design process. We're currently at 60% plans for the phase 3 project, which is from the 2.4 to the 4.2 milepost. The project study began back in 2020 and has progressed up to this year, where we went into final design. There's a lot of detail on this slide. If you want to look at the detail in the future, it'll be available on the website. You can view a download or a version of the PowerPoint and look at the details on it and more information relating to the schedule. This slide shows the limits of the Phase AB study that was done for the corridor, which included US 84, 285, and New Mexico 68, beginning at the intersection of US 84, 285, and extending all the way through Espanola and the Oquehawinge Pueblo, and ending just south of New Mexico 74, which is basically north of the core area of the Pueblo. The corridor was, because of the size and cost of the project, was divided into 3 separate projects following the study phase for design and construction. The presentation will focus on the northern project, which is shown in yellow and which is now in final design and currently scheduled for construction in 2026 or 27. And again, this shows the 3 different colors show the approximate limits of the 3 different projects that are being designed. The southern project is also shown in blue, is also currently in design at about 60% complete. The northern project, which I've also kept with the yellow color, the northern project begins at the 2.4 milepost and ends at 4.2, and it will include full reconstruction. The design also includes buffered on-street bike lanes and sidewalk south of Lower Ranchito Road, separate multi-use trails for bike and pedestrians from Lower Ranchito to Pope Avenue, new traffic signals and geometric improvements at New Mexico 291 and Eagle Drive, a roundabout improvement at the Pope Avenue intersection, which is the main entrance to the Oquehawinge Pueblo community and business complexes. Geometric updates and safety improvements at the OK Casino Drive entrance to the casino, and street lighting from the beginning of the project at the south end, which starts inside the city limits, and extends. It's basically starts south of New Mexico 291, and that lighting extends all the way up to and through the Pope roundabout near the northern end of the project. At that point, the job will convert back to a rural section to match the jobs that have been recently constructed north of the project. The location study procedure refers to the term purpose and need to explain why the NMDOT is undertaking the proposed actions and what its objectives are. Purpose and need provides a basis for developing the performance measures for evaluation of alternatives. That part of the process has been completed, but the needs for the New Mexico 68 project beginning at the 2.4 milepost and ending at the 4.2 are that the facility is in extremely poor condition and is deteriorating in need of full reconstruction. It does not meet current design or safety standards for a primary arterial, and it does not meet design or safety standards for a multimodal users, which basically is referring to pedestrians, bicycles, and transit. The purpose for the project, which will sound somewhat similar, but the project, again, same beginning and ending point, 2.4 to 4.2 milepost, will correct physical deficiencies in the roadway infrastructure. It'll improve safety, reducing speeds and incorporating other safety calming measures and improving nighttime visibility. And it will provide a continuous and accessible multimodal facility for bicycles and pedestrians. This slide summarizes some of the key areas that were discussed during the public and stakeholder involvement meetings that preceded this meeting. They were identified during the study, also in the study report that was created for the project. The information was used to rank and evaluate the different design concepts that were developed. For clarity, we've grouped them into 7 categories on this particular slide, those being safety, access, multimodal, traffic signals, drainage, cultural and environmental awareness, and right-of-way concerns and coordination. I'll now turn the presentation over to Chris Bonanno to discuss access control.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone. As we've discussed in previous meetings, access to NMDOT roadways is controlled by the State Access Management Manual. This document states that property owners abutting a public road have a right of reasonable access, but that the right of access is subject to regulation for the purpose of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the traveling public. With that in mind, our goals for the project were to clearly define the access points by establishing standardized and better defined curb cuts or curb returns, reduce the hazards associated with uncontrolled left turns by maintaining or implementing raised median access control at and between the major intersections, and where alternative access is not available and safety constraints allow, construct what we call a two-way continuous left turn lane. So the image you can see there on the left shows an area of the existing corridor where there's a poor definition of the existing access points and a heavy concentrations of driveways. It's just hard to tell where people can come onto the road or where they can go off. The image on the right shows the planned improvements, which include new driveways, new curb and gutter, which we've shown in blue to make it a little bit easier for you to see, better definition and control at the intersections, new raised medians, and that two-way left turn lane that I mentioned. I'll now turn the presentation back to Steve Harris to continue on.
Thank you, Chris. There's 4 typical roadway sections for the project, each based on different conditions as you move through the project. The first typical section seen here begins at milepost 2.4, which is about 650 feet south of New Mexico 291. And it ends at milepost 2.7, which is near Calle Jose Trujillo. And I think Chris, why don't you go back to the previous slide now for anybody that may not know where Calle Jose Trujillo is. Let's do that. And if you look at the slide, you'll see the street labels on it. If you can't read it, it is the one that's almost directly in the middle of the slide on the image on the right, going down. There you go. Thank you, Chris. So that's where this section, typical section ends. Basically, in this typical section, we have on-street bike lanes that have a buffer between the driving lanes and the bicyclists. It's a 5-foot bike lane with a 3-foot buffer. The driving lanes are 11 feet wide. That's a traffic calming feature that is part of the design. 11-foot driving lanes. We have a 2-way left-hand turn lane in the middle, and that is primarily because there is a high density of driveways, and there's no alternative access to those properties. So we're maintaining full access by having we're eliminating the raised median in this particular area of the job so that those driveways can make both left and right-hand turns. The job also, the typical section also is going from a, part of it is already an urban section, but it will be entirely an urban section. So it will have curb and gutter, and then the sidewalk behind the curb and gutter. And then of course the street lighting that will begin at the south end of the job and extend all the way up north to the Pope roundabout. Okay. Next slide, Chris. Did we go to? Maybe we already did. Okay. The second typical section begins at Calle Valdez and extends north to Lower Ranchitos on the project so basically from the 2.7 to the 2.9 milepost. It is a 4-lane roadway section, 2-way left turn lanes, which still continue through this section, median curbs with left turn lanes at the intersections so that we can eliminate conflicts with intersection traffic and driveways. Let me look at this real quickly. I apologize. It also has the 11-foot driving lanes. It has the 2-way left turn lane in the middle, separated buffered multi-use trail. So the difference in this one and the one south of it primarily is there's no longer an on-street bike lane. That's been transitioned over to a 10-foot multi-use trail that is basically completely outside of the roadway section. So pedestrians and bicyclists will navigate up and down the roadway on either the east or west side of the road, much like a sidewalk. And but it's a 10-foot wide trail. Next slide. The third typical section begins at Lower Ranchitos and continues north to the Pope Avenue roundabout. And from this point forward, there is a raised median island. The old median was 75 feet wide. The new median will be 20 feet wide, but there will be this raised island with, we anticipate colored patterned concrete in the center. And again, the bike lanes or the multi-use trail is on the outside of the roadway. Again, the street lighting continues down the corridor through the urban section here. And that's pretty much the elements of this. Again, it has 11-foot driving lanes on this particular section of the roadway. Next slide. Once you pass through the Pope roundabout, the typical section will return to the rural section, which pretty much mirrors the median and the driving lanes that are out there today. However, it'll still be fully reconstructed because of the condition of the roadway. The median in this area has some variable dimensions, but it's still approximately about 75 feet wide. The existing shoulders are inconsistent in width, anywhere from 1 foot to 3 feet on the inside, on the median sides, and on the outside it can be anywhere from I think 6 to 8 feet. The new typical section, the shoulders on the outside will be 10-foot shoulders, and the shoulders on the inside or the median side of the roadway will be 4-foot shoulders. That's consistent and matches the projects that are currently under construction north of this project. Basically, this is a fairly short section. It ends about 650 feet north of Pope. Next slide. Let's see. The design for New Mexico 291, the next handful of slides will all be the primary intersections along the job. The design for New Mexico 291 includes geometric improvements and a traffic signal at the intersection. The advantages to that are it expands the right turn curb radii and accommodates larger vehicles. It has a dedicated left and right turn lane on the westbound lanes of 291. It has protected pedestrian crossings and ADA compliant curb ramps that will improve safety and accessibility. ADA refers to Americans with Disabilities requirements, and basically those are slopes and surface requirements that make it more accessible for people that have disabilities or have limited mobility, so that they can easily cross roads and navigate down those roads as pedestrians. So you can see today there are no crosswalks at this intersection. The proposed intersection has crosswalks, has pedestrian actuated crossings for them that they can get across the intersection with the protection of the signal. And of course, the signal will have street lighting, so it will be well illuminated at night. And this intersection ties to the planned pedestrian improvements along New Mexico 68 and matches those that are along 291. However, 291 is not a pedestrian designed facility farther to the east. Next slide. The intersection at the OK Casino will be reconstructed to match the new roadway typical section 3 that we showed a few slides back, with the raised median and the 20-foot wide median. The improvements will include better line of sight for left turning vehicles along New Mexico 68. It will provide a pedestrian crossing on the north side of the intersection to satisfy access to the multi-use trail on both sides, and also any foot traffic that will need to pass from the east to the west side of the roadway in a safe manner. It will also include the safety enhancements that are associated with the main line. It'll include street lighting. That street lighting is designed to meet what we call nighttime. It's designed for nighttime visibility, but it's also designed to include what we call dark skies, which is technology that reduces what some people refer to as night or light pollution. It basically prevents the light from scattering and wandering far away from the road. It pretty much keeps the light focused directly on traffic right around the road and the people that are right around the road. Next slide. There was also a new signal going in at Eagle Drive, and It'll be constructed to match the roadway typical section again. And the improvements include better sight distance for the left turning vehicles, pedestrian crossings to improve pedestrian access and safety, and street lighting for the nighttime visibility. And again, this has crosswalks, both north-south crosswalks and also one east-west crosswalk to accommodate anybody wanting to get from one side of the roadway to the other. Then we continue north to the Okewingay entrance, which is also referred to as Pope Avenue. At Pope Avenue, that we're putting in a roundabout in the design. This was selected because there has been a high frequency of accidents and injuries in this area, and there have been issues with the high-speed transition from the rural section not being effective without something to dampen or reduce the speed of vehicles approaching. The roundabout will achieve that. It'll reduce serious injuries and fatal crashes in the area. It should reduce the side street delays that currently exist coming out of the Pueblo and entering the Pueblo. It'll provide a visible transition point between the urban and rural highway sections, consistent with the need for slower speeds in the urban area. It'll improve traffic flow and create less congestion on the approaching roads for basically the crossroads mixing with the main line, and maintain safe multimodal pedestrian and bicycle access through the intersection. Again, this will be well lit so that the pedestrian crossings are visible not only during the day but at night. And it will also it does have some minor right-of-way and easement impacts associated with the intersection. We're working in coordination with the tribal government to identify those and modify the right-of-way accordingly. The approach at this intersection on the northbound approaches, or if you're traveling north, and if you're south of the roundabout traveling north, the typical section is the typical section number 3 that shows the raised median. And if you are southbound or just north of the roundabout traveling towards Espanola, the typical section is typical section number 4 associated with this thing. I've also added in a slide that this is kind of a graphical 3D slide that kind of shows what the roundabout looks like after it goes in place. We have not worked up the details for the median or the island treatment, but there will be some sort of vertical element in the island in that circular area in the middle that'll create something that will the drivers approaching it will see it, and it will should help them navigate through the roundabout. It's a pretty standard feature for roundabouts, but this shows you at least how it's laid out and kind of what it looks like on the ground out there. I think I need to turn the presentation over to Teresa at this point so she can discuss environmental compliance.
You can take it, Teresa.
Yeah, I thought this was your slide, Laura.
Yes, it is.
Okay, there you go.
So these are just a few of the next steps that are anticipated. Sorry, let me turn on my video for everyone. The public engagement period is the public comment period is scheduled to conclude on December 7th. So that's 4 weeks from now. The environmental documentation will be ongoing for until the spring of next year. So we have completed the cultural resources field surveys, and the results of those field surveys indicated that there aren't any adverse effects on cultural or historic resources that are anticipated from this project. Same with biological resources. We have conducted those field surveys, and the results of those field surveys have indicated that there will not be significant impacts on biological resources from this project. So the environmental documentation, the consultation with other agencies, and the certification process will be ongoing, as I said, through spring of next year. The engineers will be continuing to work on final design through the summer of next year, and then the construction, if funded, would be anticipated to begin in the fall of 2026. So this is our conclusion slide. These are just ways that you can reach out to the design team if you have any questions or comments that come up that were not addressed in the question and answer session that we're about to kick off. You can call us at 505-431-2678. Looks like there's a typo on this last slide. It's 431-2678. The email address for this project is just espanola@swca.com. And you can always visit the website that remains live even after the comment period ends on December 7th. So you can always access project information or get contact information on the website. So again, that is swcavirtualpublicinvolvement.com/Espanola. Of course, there's always the snail mail option, and that address is also up on the screen. And again, we do request that you try to get in comments by December 7th if possible, so we can incorporate those into our documentation. Okay, so that concludes the formal presentation portion of the meeting. We are going to open it up for the question and answer session. So for those of you who are joining on the Zoom app on your phone or on your smartphone or on your computer, you can either raise your hand using the icon that's a hand at the bottom of your screen. You can also use the Q&A function if you would just rather type in your question there. For those of you who are joining just via audio on your phones and you've dialed in, you can raise your hand by pushing *9, and we will see that you've raised your hand, and then once we queue you up by saying your name or the last 4 digits of the phone number that appears on our end of things, then we'll say you can unmute yourself, and you can do that by pressing *6. Okay, so for those of you on the phone, again, that was a lot of information. So if you do want to raise your hand, just press *9. Okay. Let me see if there's anyone who's typed in. We don't have any questions typed into the Q&A, and I don't see anyone raising their hand yet. So we can just give it a few minutes. If anyone has anything that occurs to them that they want to cover. If anyone at the DOT has anything that we have not yet touched on that you would like to share while people are potentially coming up with any questions that they might have, now would be a good time.
Yeah, so this is Diego. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're thinking about any questions, I know that it's a winter wonderland outside, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know that I've been personally dealing with weather delays and utility outages, so I hope we provided some good information on this project, and get a hold of us if you have any questions. I will give it a couple more minutes for comments.
And just as a note, we also are recording this meeting, and the recording will be made available on the NMDOT YouTube channel that we will also link to on the project website that I've read off a couple times now, so you can access it that way as well. So I'm not seeing any raised hands or any Q&A. Jennifer, I'll let you give me a sense of how long you'd like to hang on for the folks to potentially have questions come up. Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we're going to wrap things up for the evening and let people get back to their warm blankets and hopefully a cozy fire, because it's that kind of night. So thank you so much for those of you who joined us, and we hope to hear from you guys soon.